Vice Chair Novak?
Here.
Member Schutte? Here. Member Henderson?
Here.
Member Dodson? Member Maloney?
Here.
Member Erb?
Here.
Ex officio Member Rosenberg?
Here.
A quorum's present.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're now on to agenda item 3, which is opening public comment. Again, this is for CAMPO. So do I have any CAMPO? Mr. French.
Mr. Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioners and Supervisors and everybody. I just want to say that due to a double up on timing, I won't be able to stay for both meetings, but I'm so glad to see people out. I'm so glad that the public's interest in coming out is including this meeting and the next, I hope. Please stick around, don't leave. Anyhow, so I'm going to have to step out a certain time, but thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Do I have any other CAMPO public? Okay, then we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is approval of the minutes of March 13th. Does anyone have any corrections on the CAMPO minutes? Didn't see any. Then I'll accept a motion for approval, please. Commissioner
Approval.
Maloney.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we are now on to agenda item 5A, which is discussion and possible action regarding the Unified Planning Work Program for the proposed CAMPO activities during fiscal year 25 and 26. And she is ready. Ms. Kelly Norman, would you take us through this, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kelly Norman, Senior Transportation Planner for the record. Staff has completed the fiscal years 2025 and 2026 Unified Planning Work Program, which can be viewed in its entirety in Exhibit 1. CAMPO's public participation plan requires a 30-day public comment period, which was active from March 6th through the end of day April 5th, 2024. Staff submitted the draft to NDOT, FHWA, and FTA. Staff received no public comments. However, staff have incorporated recommendations by board members such as the addition of trucks in data collection and management and work element 5, and the clarification of updating the Jack Transit Coordinated Human Services Plan within work element 4 as discussed and requested by the Board of Supervisors and the RTC. A full list of updates is referenced on packet page 10. In the explanation of fiscal impact section of the staff report on packet page 11, staff outlined the local match shares required by Carson City, Douglas County, and Lyon County to satisfy the 5% match for the Consolidated Planning Grant funds. The fiscal year 2025 and 2026 budgets are based on a reasonable expectation of the available formula-based CPG funds, plus any rollover funds from previous years. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Does any member have a question? No? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll accept a motion then.
I move to approve the 2-year Unified Planning Work Program for fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026 as presented.
I will second.
Motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to agenda item 5B, which is discussion and possible action concerning a cooperative agreement with NDOT and CAMPO to receive $696,504.23. I mean, we can't forget the pennies here. In CPG funds for fiscal year 2025 to be expended in accordance with CAMPO's planning work program and the maximum local match of the $29,667.80. Ms. Norman, will you take us through this item, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kelly Norman, Senior Transportation Planner. CAMPO and NDOT entered into this cooperative agreement for the distribution of the Consolidated Planning Grant funds annually. The agreement is referenced in Attachment 1. The agreement provides Consolidated Planning Grant funds for fiscal year 2025 to be used as outlined within CAMPO's approved UPWP work elements 1 through 6 as presented in CAMPO Item 5A. The agreement allows CAMPO to spend up to $726,172.03, which includes fiscal year 2025 formula funds plus the UPWP carry forward. The fiscal year 2025 agreement includes $696,504.23 in federal Consolidated Planning Grant funds, plus the required 5% local match of $29,667.80. Any unused CPG funding and local match will be carried forward to the next fiscal year. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Does any member have a question? Pretty normal thing we do. But is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll accept a motion, please. Okay, great.
I can do it. I move to approve the agreement as presented and to authorize the transportation manager to sign the agreement, as well as future amendments that extend the time for performance or approve funding changes not to exceed 10% of the present agreement amount.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 6A, which is our transportation manager's report. Mr. Martinovich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. A few items I want to update the CAMPO board on here. The first is the NDOT Southern Sierra Corridor Study is out for public comment. This is a corridor study that begins at the interchange of I-580, US 50, US 395, and continues south all the way down to the end of 395 where it goes into California at Topaz Lake. There are public comments. You can make public comments on the website. The website is ndotus395.com, so ndotus395.com. There will be a public meeting on this held by NDOT on April 24th. I believe it's at Fuji Park. So feel free to attend that. I believe they have some preliminary concepts and exhibits and are moving along on their Southern Sierra study. A second meeting will be held in Douglas County a few days later, I believe. On the 23rd, the day before. There we go. Thank you, Commissioner Erb. Speaking of NDOT, we are continuing to coordinate with NDOT on our US 50 efforts. As I mentioned at our last board meeting, we were awarded the Phase 2 funding for the US 50 East Carson Complete Streets corridor study. We are going to continue to coordinate with NDOT on an agreement. We are looking to potentially expand the scope of that slightly more into Mount House to be able to do a little bit more on the US 50 corridor. Right now, we're going partially into Mount House. We'd like to go a little bit further in there. So we're going to work with NDOT, the planning folks over there to get that study going through an agreement. So an agreement pending to this board in the near future on that. We're also continuing to work with NDOT on safety improvements and concepts up in the Mount House area. Plan on meeting with them in the coming weeks, as well as continuing our coordination with Lyon County on different options and concepts. You know, one of the grant opportunities that's available right now is called the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, which is a federal infrastructure grant. And we are looking at that as a potential option for funding some improvements in that area. A lot of work, a lot of details associated with that, but we're pulling together some information to see if we'd be eligible and it fits all the criteria we're looking for. So more to come on that as well in the coming months. Speaking of safety, our local road safety plan is nearing completion. We anticipate going live with a public version next week. NDOT and their consultant, Kimley Horn, and working with Kelly, have been really tag teaming to get this out, get this presentable, get the input we need. We are planning on having, and this sort of relates into 5B, a CAMPO meeting on April 29th at 5 p.m. To discuss the local road safety plan primarily, as well as potential grant opportunities that could come from that. So I believe I've reached out to most of the members, if not all the members, about that April 29th meeting. So hopefully that's on your calendars, 5 o'clock in this room. Other items we're working on is the travel demand model. We've been working with Douglas County and our consultant, Wood Rogers, on updating CAMPO's travel demand model. We're getting now all the 2020 census data incorporated in there, as well as other new land use, particularly in Lyon County, where there's been a lot of growth, incorporating that. It dovetails well into other activities that are going, such as the corridor studies, such as Carson City's master plan update, such as our future RTP amendment and future adoption here in the coming year and a half. So it's good timing to update that plan. It's been going really well. We plan to have a public-facing GIS database so that those who want to see and use our travel demand model don't have to come to staff all the time and say, what's your model showing here and here? We can provide that a little bit more public service, a more friendly, approachable model that also has capabilities for staff internally to run and operate different scenarios. So trying to enhance and bring the model up to a little bit more current standard with a lot of our partner agencies are doing. We're also including Douglas County as part of that through an interlocal agreement to include all of Douglas County in our travel demand model, kind of a shared cooperative task there as well. So hopefully it's a benefit to them as well. Looking forward to getting that done here shortly. Lastly, I hinted on it, but we have an RTP amendment in the works. The primary purpose of the RTP amendment is to incorporate RTP's regional transportation plan, to incorporate a variety of these more recently completed plans, such as our Carson Area Transportation System Management Plan, updates to the travel demand model, potentially the local road safety plan, and other Douglas County Safe Routes to School Master Plan. All these plans that have been completed since our last RTP was adopted, want to get those in to make sure all those projects are eligible to receive federal funding at the right times. So Kelly Norman has been working on that, and we plan to have that potentially at the June meeting for review and approval by the CAMPO board. So look for that in the coming future as well. That's what I have on 6A. I do have one item on 6B, Madam Chair.
Let me just check first. Does anyone have any questions on 6A? Greg?
Just question or comment. I mean, the 395 corridor study's out. It's mostly in Douglas County, but are there any particular things we should be looking at within the CAMPO boundaries at this point?
It does include the 580, 395, US 50 interchange. This is not, an engineering level study, but we are looking at some alternatives there and how it fits in with the corridor going south. And I know that that area is an interest for this entire board and community. So just wanted to make that clear that that's part of the scope of this study.
Okay, and then we won't be having any presentation at CAMPO for it, so it's up to us to
If
look at
if you would
ourselves.
like us to, we're happy to bring that to you.
Okay, but we don't have a CAMPO meeting in May, right?
And we're still kind of, I would say, more kind of midway, I guess past midway in the study, but we could come back, you know, before it's finalized. I'll have to look at the specific timeline of it, but I think we have some time to still come back, maybe not during the public comment period, but we would certainly accept comments from this board and the public at any time. So we're happy to come back to this board before that is finalized. I think we have plenty of time for that.
I would like to see that. Does everybody agree? Good, because it's a critical item.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We're happy to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Then we'll now move on to agenda item 6B, which is any other comments or reports. You have anything under that?
I'll just note one item for anticipate, I mentioned the local road safety plan, April 29th. An item for the June meeting of CAMPO is a amendment to our public participation plan. We need to incorporate some additional Title VI mapping in our public participation plan. So that's going to be going for public comment here in short order. There's a federally required 45-day public comment period on public participation plans. So that's going to go out here soon, and we'll bring that minor revision of that PPP to the CAMPO board in June. So
Is that a new element that was added?
it's a newer element, working closely with Federal Transit Administration and the Federal Highway Administration. This is an area where I think we could bolster our public participation plan and want to make sure we don't have any future audit findings or compliance issues with that.
Okay.
Easy cleanup. That's what I have. Thank you.
Anything? Sandra?
Just some updates from NDOT leadership. We have finally filled all of our director's office, deputy and assistant directors, and I'd like to introduce Rebecca Capular, for those of you who may not know her. She's the new assistant director of planning, so she'll be my alternate on this board. In addition, Joe Harrington, that name may sound familiar. He used to be in the area where we've recruited him back. He is our new communications director. He's in the process of relocating from Florida. He realized his mistake in moving there and is coming back to Nevada where his heart is. So we're excited to welcome him back. We're excited to welcome Rebecca. I don't recall if I mentioned last month, because I think I missed last month. Jay Pullen, whom some of you may know, is our assistant director of operations now. So we have a full house in the director's office and ready to get some stuff done. Pick up some of the things we've dropped in the meantime. So.
Great. Well, we welcome them to the team. It's wonderful. Anybody else have anything else to share? Nope. Okay, then we're going to go to final public comment for CAMPO. Is there any? Okay, seeing none, then we are adjourned as CAMPO. And about 5 minutes till, we'll come back as RTC. Thank you. Yay. Regional Transportation Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Sheedy,
Here.
Member Novak,
Here.
Commissioner Novak, Commissioner Dodson,
Here.
Commissioner Maloney,
Here.
quorum's present.
Thank you so much. I now have opening public comment, and the first on the list is Mark Costa. Would like to testify. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name, for the record, is Mark Costa, resident of Carson City. What I want to talk about today is a $25 million annual road maintenance cost. Just focusing on this one particular item concerning the road maintenance project that we're on to go ahead and bring our roads up to standard. It's very important how this 25 million annual projection is calculated. This cost estimate is extremely important. Much of it depends on it in terms of transparency, planning, and funding. It is really the foundation for the road condition analysis because a lot is based on it. I discussed this issue with Chris Martinovich at the March 23rd workshop and by email. I was referred to the Carson City Pavement Condition Analysis report dated August 2022. Additional information was provided at last night's panel presentation at the Brewery Arts Center. It was very informative, which it showed the components of the $25 million cost, but did not address all of the concerns. Specifically, the following questions exist. How is the $25 million calculated for each activity category? Specifically, what are the algorithms, formulas, variable values, and assumptions? In last night's presentation, how could we end up with around $25 million each year in annual cost? Significant variability should be expected over the years. One year should be higher than another for a variety of different reasons. If we don't do all of the $25 million of the required maintenance for a given year, how are subsequent years affected? And won't that result in one requirement for a particular year higher than another requirement? There needs to be a presentation or a workshop, or excuse me, a worksheet printout showing how each category of the $25 million cost is calculated with its components. This presentation and the calculation worksheet would then be made available online for future reference. Making the micropaver and cost calculations transparent allows the public the opportunity to ask questions to alleviate their concerns, which they have many. A less costly road maintenance strategy may become apparent if we have that analysis. This knowledge may help to achieve a consensus more quickly and easily. And it looks like I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're perfect. Okay, next I have Troy Jordan.
Members of the commission, for the record, my name is Troy Jordan. I'm currently the Deputy Director of the state's Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, or for short, DETR. Many of you know us to be an unemployment agency, but one of our major missions is through our Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation. We serve members of the public with intellectual, physical, and other disabilities, as well as we have an entire blind services bureau. Why am I here? Within the last 48 hours, we have received 12 to 15 emails. The last count, I think, was 13 before lunch. I think it got to 15 before I left the office today, of concerned clientele of ours in the Vocational Rehabilitation Bureau about something on the agenda tonight regarding the JAC. And that they are under the impression, whether rightfully or wrongfully, that there's either going to be a significant reduction to that, and by JAC I mean jump around Carson buses, or there's going to be an elimination or some sort of significant reduction to that. I would tell you that I don't know that to be true or not true because we haven't had enough time to look into it, but they have been given that impression. And they had asked my office to come in and support the JAC, so to speak. So I'm just here to tell you, and one of my vocational rehabilitation staff is here, and I believe he's going to speak later, just to give you the mindset of where we're at with the JAC is that our major mission with vocational rehabilitation is to get people with disabilities and visual impairments gainful employment. And one of the things that's required for that is transportation. And if the JAC were to be eliminated or to be substantially cut, it would cost some of these people their jobs. I just wanted you to take that into consideration if there is a vote on that tonight or if that is accurate information. But that we got, like I said, no less than 12 worries about that today at the Dieter admin email. I would just say that it's an invaluable service to the people in the disability community, especially those with visual impairments and those with epilepsy, because they're not legally allowed to drive. And with that, I'll conclude.
Thank you. We don't have anything on the agenda to do that, but anyway, okay. Just wanted to let you know. And I don't have anyone else for opening public comment. I have somebody on a item specific, but not opening. Okay, then we're going to move on to agenda item 4A, which is the approval of our minutes of March 13th, 2024. There is a small correction at 6:01 or at 35 seconds, got to get that right, that changes the she to Commissioner Maloney. Is there any other changes, corrections, anybody? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
I move to approve the minutes from April 10th, or I mean, that's today, from March 13th, 2024, as corrected.
I will second.
Have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. I'll let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 5A, discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on the 2025 budgets and supplemental requests for regional transportation, transit, CAMPO, and street maintenance. Ms. Schutte, may I have your disclosure, please?
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. This agenda item includes fiscal year 2025 budget recommendations for the Regional Transportation Fund, which provides funds to staff several city positions, including transportation manager. My nephew, Chris Martinovich, is the city's transportation manager, and his salary is partially funded by the Regional Transportation Fund. While I do have a familial relationship with Chris, this is a routine procedural matter for the broader purpose of making a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on budgets within the RTC's purview, and my nephew's salary is being considered along with other employees' salaries in the aggregate. There is no discussion specific to Chris's individual salary, nor is there any discussion specifically related to the position of transportation manager. Additionally, Nevada's ethics law gives appropriate deference to the public policy of this state, which favors the right of a public official to perform the duties for which that public official was elected or appointed, and to vote because abstention disrupts the normal course of representative government. Abstention is only required in clear cases where the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my situation would be materially affected, and I do not believe that to be the case because this agenda item concerns broad policy recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for RTC budgetary issues as a whole. I make this disclosure for the sake of full transparency, but I will be voting on this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Schutte. Also, just for the public to make sure that they're aware, we're using late material that was posted on the website and is available, just so that we're all on the same documents. Mr. Martinovich, would you take us through this item, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll start with the late material was specific to the Transit 225 budget supplemental. There's one page, one number on one page changed there. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager, wanted to walk through the four budgets for the Regional Transportation Commission, the Transit 225 budget, the CAMPO 245 budget, the Regional Transportation 250, and the Street Operations 256. Those are the account number budgets. Also with me today are a number of folks from the financial side of things. Sherry Russell-Benaboo is online, as well as Pam Granger's here, and Courtney's here, and Jamie's here, and lots of folks are here to support and questions for things. I'm going to give a quick highlight of each of the budgets, and then let Sherry or others chime in if there's anything they want to highlight, and then we can certainly do questions and things like that. So I'm going to start first on Exhibit 1, the Transit 225 budget. All these budgets are similar in the way they're structured, in that the upper section is revenue and the lower section is expenditures. So on this particular budget, as shown on packet page 17, lines 1 through 46 are revenue, and then beginning at line 50 is the expenditure side of things. For all of these, today we'll be looking at the column 2025 budget column, final budget column, particularly on this one. That is the final budget being proposed for recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. So the first one I wanted to highlight is the first line there is a federal grants. That's our anticipated federal grant revenue side of things. Below that are other revenue sources, including fares, advertising, other sales, sales of fares, other state grants, other federal grants, as well as the operating match from the Carson City's general fund listed there on line item 41. On the expense side of things, we have our transit coordinator under the salary section, and the majority of the expense for the transit account is under the operating contract, which is line number 65. That is the contract line where the expenditures for First Transit, our contracted operator, are expended from. Other line items on there are included for vehicle fuel, maintenance services, fleet services. Other line items are listed there throughout the budget section. There are two supplemental requests associated with the transit budget. The first supplemental request is for an increase of $25,000 to the professional services line item. This increase is to account for the need to update or refresh our long-range transit plan, otherwise known as our coordinated human services plan. That's going to require us to hire a consultant. We need additional funding in that line item to assist in paying that consultant for that update, which we plan to begin in '25. The other addition is for an increase to the operating contract line item, the amount there of $62,837. There's two parts to this. The first part of this increase is associated with discussion we had at our retreat back in February between the Board of Supervisors and the RTC related to a 3% increase in the operating match for Jump Around Carson. The larger component is associated with an increase to the local match to account for an error that was discovered in the operating contract's billable hours. The details of that are described in the late material as well as in the original packet on page 21, the details of that under bullet 2 in the middle of that page. We'll be bringing that contract for an amendment at a future date, probably July timeframe later this summer, to amend the first transit operating contract. But this is the first step in making sure we have available local match to meet those needs. So that's the transit budget. I can pause there to see if Sherry has anything she'd like to add.
Thank you. Sherry Russell-Benaboo, CFO for the record. First, I want to say all these special revenue funds, so all the money stays with these funds. We are not allowed to move the money outside of the fund. So all of it will roll forward that is not used in 24 and will be added to 25. Also, before I get into the detail, there's a little tweak with the presentation that we did. Today, you are recommending the tentative budget to the board. However, I did include some final budget tweaks that we know are going to happen. I was given some grant information kind of late, And so instead of changing everything and possibly having an error, I decided to leave it alone, and we'll add those extra budget dollars as well as the expense into the final budget. So that's the final column that you see in the transit and the CAMPO funds. And then I also made a notice to what Chris was talking about regarding the supplementals. Mayor Bagwell also had a great question on the interest income as we go through all of these. The interest income in 22 and 23, those are actual audited numbers. And you'll see there's two lines there. There's an interest earnings, and then there's one that's a fair market value adjustment. Interest earnings are accumulated monthly every time we earn interest. However, we do one fair market value adjustment at year end. And with it being a very volatile year, it's an election year, so who knows what's going to happen to the market. It is possible that we could have a large loss this year, again, like we did in 22, which would show at the end of the year a loss instead of the very large gain that we show now. So we don't ever actually add interest earnings because we don't know what's going to happen at the fair market value at the end of the year. It's really a time at 6/30/2024 is when we value all our investments and determine if there's a gain or loss. So that's very important to note throughout. We also didn't increase the Jack ticket revenue. We did have a increase in the rates. However, we weren't really seeing that increase come through yet. I hope at year end it's about 125,000. That's what we're hoping for, but it's not looking like it's going to be quite that much. So we decided to leave it at 100,000 and let some historical data build up before we increase that budget. That's all I had, Chris.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I would like to just talk a little bit because somehow I don't think you're the only one getting emails about a reduction, and there is no reduction in the Jack Assist. I think inadvertently, potentially, there were requests to expand our Jack system, and I think that got mixed up a little bit because this board and the Board of Supervisors determined that we did not have dollars to expand the service. And so inadvertently, I think people were notified that the board, anyway, we're not reducing the bus stops that we have right now, and Jack Assist must occur 3/4 of a mile around every bus stop. So we're not reducing those requirements, but we are not expanding. There was a time where we had, if I'm not mistaken, we had some excess money from CARES or some other things out there that we could do some expanded work because we had extra federal dollars. But the program as it existed prior to all that extra money still exists, and we're not reducing it. So hopefully putting that out. And did I miss anything on that? Did I clarify that?
No, we're not reducing service. We
Right.
have taken a look and seen where we can be more efficient in some of our service areas, and paratransit's one of those areas that we can be a little bit more efficient. We want to make sure we have local match available to operate Jack in the long term, and there are some struggles with that as we've discussed at the retreat, but service remains.
Right, we haven't.
For
cut,
Jack.
So hopefully that will help you answer that. Does anyone else have any other questions on the transit before we move to the next budget? Okay, let's go to the next one.
Moving on to our next budget section is the
Mayor
CAMPO.
Bagwell, sorry.
Oh,
excuse me.
sorry.
Will we be asked to approve all these separately or together?
I don't know yet, because I need to take public comment, so we're probably going to listen to all of them, then I'll take the public comment, because I do have Mr. Chapman that has something specific, so, and then we'll come back. So, you just ruined it, Mike. You're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
Moving to the CAMPO 245 budget and Exhibit 2 on packet page 24. This item is relatively straightforward. Again, the revenue is the upper section to line 14, and the lower section, beginning at line 16, is the expenditure side of the budget. The revenue is estimated based on the agreement that was executed or approved at the CAMPO item under 5B for the $696,504 in federal dollars. Local match is listed below that. On the expenditure side of things, very similar. This will be expended through CAMPO's Unified Planning Work Program, and as indicated through the CAMPO meeting a short time ago. Relatively straightforward budget on this one.
Any member have any questions on CAMPO? Nope. Okay, we're going to move on then to the Regional Transportation Commission Fund.
The next one is our Regional Transportation Commission 250 budget, packet page 26, Exhibit 3. Similar breakdown, revenue and expenditures, looking at the 25 budget column. Line 1, I wanted to highlight a few lines in here, and most notably line 1. This is the RTC 9-cent gasoline tax. So this is the 9-cent gasoline tax that we pay here in Carson City, and the amounts listed in prior years, as well as the budget amount there is listed in the column. Below that, on line 3, is the capital sanitation. This is the 3% waste management franchise fee line item. This item is collected, as I mentioned, through that franchise agreement listed there at $350,000 for fiscal year 2025. Right below that, those gray sections, those are the federal grants. We have 2 federal grants we're augmenting at this time. However, as we get additional federal grants, as an example item later tonight, these get included into this section as the agreements get executed and the revenue gets received. Below that are various other revenue funds. On line 15 is the 5-cent diesel tax. So there's the revenue estimated and generated in the past for the diesel tax. And then below that, line item 23 is the Complete Streets donation. So when you register a vehicle and you donate those $2, this is where those dollars are stored in that account. Some of these accounts are rolled up together and expended on the expenditure side. Some of these accounts, such as the Complete Streets account and the Capital Sanitation account, are directed into specific expense accounts. So for instance, the Capital Sanitation revenue account is directly accounted for and tracked through the street repairs account, which is line number 63. So the money that comes in through the Capital Sanitation is expended through the street repairs line item for tracking purposes. Similarly with the Complete Streets side of things, it's line item 77 is the Complete Streets expenditure account. When we look at the projects, which is the gray section in the expenditures, there's 3 lines I want to highlight. First is our safety improvement project line item. This is on line item 99. This is our annual $100,000 for our safety improvement project. We've used this for a variety of sources in the past, including school zone flashing beacons. We've used it to match grants for improvements up on Desatoya. We've used it for some barrier rail and other safety improvements. We're also planning on using this for a variety of potentially federal grants through the HSIP funding program. So it's a flexible source primarily focused on safety improvements. And we plan to get those projects out and match federal dollars to leverage more projects. Line item 109 is the $1 million set aside for District 2 projects. That's our next district in fiscal year 25. And then line item 112, infrastructure capital, is sort of the leftover, I call it. And those 2 line items, the $1 million and the 342, are tentative available budget that we are going to start using to estimate project costs for District 2. So when we have project prioritization, which is coming in June, our RTC budget that we'll be using for that basis of how many projects can we deliver will be that $1.34 million there. The last section of this is the Safe Routes to School, which is 95% federally funded. And so that those line items beginning on line item 18 is Safe Routes to School funding. So that's what I have on that one. There are no supplementals in the 250 budget. Was there anything, Sherry, you wanted to highlight?
I do, please. Yeah. I wanted to highlight gas taxes. Obviously, they're flat from 24 to 25. And we did that because we are not seeing gas taxes increase. Unfortunately, I mean, there's more people moving here, but the gas taxes just are not increasing. There's many months where there's actually less fuel. So I'm hoping that they'll stay flat, and I don't want to over budget. We understand that newer vehicles are far more fuel efficient, And, you know, the hybrids and the fully electric vehicles are just, they're just really, really killing our gas, revenue. So, so that's one comment. The other comment is this fund receives some lease revenue from South Carson Street properties. As instructed in prior meetings, we'll be moving that lease revenue directly to the SCNID to offset the assessments for that fund. And then there is debt service that RTC is still paying. It actually drops in 2029 to only 585,000. And then in 2031 is zero. So it's pretty about 1.5 million until 2029. So that's when we can potentially bond. That's all I had.
Does any
Unless there's
member
any
have a
questions.
question on this fund? Mr. Dotson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, question on the usage for line 7, the Safe Streets for All. You mentioned earlier in the CAMPO meeting about the potential project at Mountain House going after some of those funds. Is this some planning money to be used for that purpose?
No, appreciate the question. This was funding that we received notice in the federal fiscal year 23's Safe Streets and Roads for All award. We won an award to update our Carson City Safe Routes to School master plan to include additional schools. And so that's what this revenue is for. It's for that project. It's separate from this potential year's federal fiscal year 24's Safe Streets and Roads for All. It's an annual grant program. We were successful last year. We're going to pursue another one this year, likely.
Nobody else has a question? I'd like to talk a little bit more, just for clarification for the public and even other members. The 1.5 million in debt, did you say drops to 500,000 in 29? And then in 31 it's
Closer
zero?
to 600.
600?
Closer to 600,000, yeah. In 2029, 585,000. And then in 2031, it's zero.
Okay.
It's
'Cause
completely
it just,
paid off.
I think that's an opportunity for us to kind of be watching what we're doing there and determining whether or not we want to look, because we gain about $1 million. So we can look to determine in a budgetary thing whether we want to issue more debt and do a large project, or whether we think having an input of $1 million and just rotating through the transportation districts. So I just want to bring that up for thought processes and planning as we continue down this budget path, that debt can be something that we can have a say on, or that we can look at to affect what we're doing in roads. So I just want to bring that up, but nobody else has any other questions? Okay. Then we'll move on.
Okay, our last budget is the Street Operations 256 budget. Similar to the Regional Transportation Commission budget, these street operations is funded through gasoline tax. It also has funding through sales tax. So on the revenue side, beginning on line 1, this is the 1 cent county option gasoline tax. Right below that on line 2 is the county option 1/4% sales tax. So in the 1/4%, the existing sales tax that's in place, called the basic city county relief tax, is listed there on line item 2. Below that, on line items 6 and 7, these are the additional fuel taxes, 3 cents and 2.35 cents. That's a total of 5.35 cents. And so street operations receives a total of 6.35 cents in gasoline taxes, and 1/4% sales tax are its primary revenue sources. A number of other items are listed there below from various sources, including contributions through interlocal agreements with various counties and such. On the expense side, a few items I wanted to highlight, beginning with line item 67. Line item 67 is the line item that's used for our signal maintenance and repair. So when we do traffic signal repairs, when we purchase equipment related to traffic signals, that's the line item that those are funded out of. Below that is line 77. This is the line item used primarily for concrete and sidewalk, curb, gutter, ADA, driveway work that our street operations crew does internally. So when we look at, when you see our crews out doing work on curbs and gutters and sidewalks, they're being funded out of this line item. On line 79, street repairs, this line item is the primary budget used for doing things like patching and potholes and crack sealing, pavement-related elements for street operations. Line 82, long line striping. This is our annual longitudinal striping budget. We also can sometimes are fortunate enough to be able to do a lot of short lines, the crosswalks, stop bars, arrows, things like that out of this as well. And that's managed by project management engineering and the street operations division, and we all see that contract here at the RTC probably later this summer. The last line item I was going to highlight is line item 88, street signs and paint. This is where the street operations sign shop, where we repair and maintain all of our signs. We also do some striping out of this when we do our annual striping around school zones and refresh those critical crosswalks at those locations. So those are what I was going to highlight in the street operations budget, unless there was additional that Sherry wanted to highlight.
The only highlight I have is this is the only one that added 0.2 of an FTE from 23 to 24. That was a supplemental approved last year for 0.2% of an accounting technician. The rest is pretty much the same that we talked about. We did increase the C-tax, the sales tax a little bit. But yeah, all the gas taxes are kind of the same. We left them flat.
Does any member have a question on this account?
Yep.
Greg?
Chris, one item, it's not that big a deal, but under items 8, 9, and 10, that's revenue we're getting from Douglas, Lyon, and Story. And is that for your signal crews helping out, or?
Sherry, if you know, I believe that's what it is, but I'm not 100% sure. My guess is that would be what it is, but maybe Sherry can confirm.
Yes, that's what it is. When you guys have projects for those 3 counties, it used to go into one line item. And then a couple years ago, we split it out so we know how much work we're doing for each county.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought.
Anybody else have a question on that one? So just looking at line 79, where we're dropping all the way down to 60,760. Is that a function of the amount of money that we have available that's dropped that?
I will turn that one question over to Sherry, if you don't mind, please.
Is that the street repairs?
Yes.
Yeah. So that in this fund is where all the excess money goes. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of excess money next year. However, when we do the roll forward from any savings in 24 that are unspent,
You'll put it there.
that's usually where it ends up going.
You'll put it there. Okay.
So anything unspent in 24 will end up going right into street maintenance, typically.
Okay. Does anybody else
Except
have
for
any other
projects, we
questions?
don't want a short project.
Go ahead, Ms. Maloney.
Thank you. Can you provide more detail on the salt and sand row, 80? It looks like it's gone up by about 20% since last year, but then the re-estimate is 29, back down. Thank you.
And perhaps Darren can assist on that one. My understanding is that is for the sand and salt that the snowplows use. Maybe Darren, you can highlight a little bit more detail on that.
Hi, Darren Schultz, Public Works Director. Yeah, so that's the salt sand that goes in our mix for plowing, sanding our roads. So what we do is fill up our warehouse leading up to the storm season, and then it's just based off of the number of storms that we get that next year. So it's kind of a guess based off of what we think the weather is. Some years we have to supplement it because we had a lot of snow, so we have to add money in there. And other years we obviously don't spend it all because we didn't have much snow. So the last few years it's pretty erratic, and that's just based off of the weather.
Does that answer your question? One more? Anybody else have any questions? No more? Okay. I think then what we'll do is Mr. Chapman, your public comment on this item.
Is it working? Good afternoon, afternoon, Madam Mayor, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mike Chapman. I'm a resident of Carson City, and my daughter, Laurel, is a client of Jack Paris Transit Services. And maybe it took some of the wind out of my sails as
Sorry.
far as advising us that you're not anticipating any cutbacks, but my comments were more directed because you had a workshop back on February 29th where there was some discussion whether to maintain current city funding as a match to the grants that you use to fund the service, possible expansion, but I believe there was also some discussion about even reducing that funding in interest of other pressures on the budgets. So with that, I'm encouraged that you're not planning to reduce services. If anything, I would like to suggest maybe some type of inflationary adjustment.
We did 3%. But go
Okay,
ahead.
yeah, because, there's a 3% on the revenue side. Hopefully, there's a corresponding adjustment on the expense side, the city match side. When they say there hasn't been any reduction in services, I guess I'm a little confused because back on March 18th, there was a notice posted in the paratransit buses that services would be reduced, and I could read it verbatim if you like. Service notice reducing daily paratransit vehicles starting March 18th, 2024. Due to budget constraints, Jack Assist will operate fewer buses each day. Customers should plan to call earlier to schedule your rides. With flexibility, we hope to meet everybody's need. We apologize for any inconvenience. Since that time, our daughter has experienced a couple minor hiccups that we've had to work around. We try to do everything we can for our daughter, but this is one important element of the service that she needs. She uses it to get to work and back home. I understand that there is a priority for Medicaid and for the dialysis patients and whatnot, and I can certainly understand that, but please keep in mind when you're looking at the budgets or future discussions regarding paratransit services, there are clients out there that just can't drive for a variety of reasons. In our case, our daughter has epilepsy. She can't get a license. This is her sole way of getting back and forth to work. We get her to her doctor's appointments, to the grocery store. She has groceries delivered if we're not available. So I can only encourage you that you maintain the service as best as you can at this current service levels. Again, we saw this notice and
Completely understand that the notice
that's
kicked
probably
off,
what's set up.
yeah.
I'll admit, we were the ones that reached out
That's
to
okay.
Dieter and to Rural Regional Center. But, they have a lot of clients too, not just us.
Nope,
So,
it's all fine.
okay,
all
thank you
fine.
very much for your time.
Thank you so
Appreciate it.
much. I really appreciate it. Okay, do I have any other public comment on this agenda item? Okay, then I will bring it back up here, and either way, the pleasure of the commission here is we can vote on all, we can vote on individuals. Either way is acceptable. So do you have a preference, since you asked the question, Ms. Maloney?
Thanks. I do have some comments on the transit budget.
Okay,
If now's a good time, I wanted to see if there was public comment first before I went into this. I made similar comments a year ago. I guess it was April 12th of 2023. And I was the only nay vote on the transit budget last year as well. So that may be the case, but I'm going to make these comments anyway. I'm going to go down through some of these line items on the transit budget, and I'm going to try to go slow, but please stop me if I go too fast. On the expense side, on the operating contract,
line item.
line item 65. Chris, the reimbursement, the match is 50%, right?
The match for fixed route operating is 50%. The max for paratransit operating is 80%. So it's somewhere in the mid 60%
Okay.
on average.
Great, thank you. Line 66, the RTC Intercity, the reimbursement rate is 50%.
It is.
Line 73, the operating supplies, the reimbursement rate is 20,000 is 50%.
Operating supplies is 50%.
50%. Vehicle fuel and oil, 50%.
50%.
Technical equipment, telephone, power, heating, rows 76 through 79, those are all 50%.
Generally 50%, or we still have some 100% match on some technical equipment. But generally, yes, 50%.
Okay, thank you. And the staff salaries,
50%.
50%. And then the ISC, the interdepartment service charges, the general fund and the fleet maintenance, are those 50%?
50%.
Okay, so when I did the math on the budget that was proposed with the match needed for those rows that I just noted, the match needed is a little under 1,100,000. But if I look at the revenue for total revenue and I just subtract out federal grants, we only have 966, 294 available. So we are short over $125,000 on this budget. It does not balance. And I understand that when we say all the revenue sums to 2,449,486 and all the expenses sum to 2,449,486, that it's balanced, but this is not a balanced budget. And I'm having trouble understanding how we get it to balance. Chris, can you help me understand?
Can I help with that? This is Sherry, the CFO. So in the 2024 column, the revised budget column, there's about $500,000 in undesignated, 499,921. That is unused match that's rolling forward.
So there's plenty.
So
Sorry, Sherry, what row is that?
85.
499,921 is sitting in
I muted
undesignated
myself.
on
Thank you.
line 86. Or no, 85, excuse me. Yeah, 499,921. So that covers the 125 and still leaves us 300 and some odd thousand undesignated general fund. And we don't do it till June 30th. I think that's what she was trying to tell us earlier, is she does all that work at the end of the fiscal year and then it rolls forward. So that will cover the match requirement that you're concerned about.
right, because we want to see any savings in line items, and we
Right.
want to make sure we have all the grant revenue in for the fiscal year and it's all been audited and the dust is settled, and then we roll forward the money.
So if that number was under 125 or close to it, I probably would be concerned with you to say, wait a minute, we're getting too close here. But
I
I think there's plenty of room.
I hear you, but you can do the same math on the 2024 budget. So we have budget for federal grants, but we can't actually get that revenue unless we have enough of non-federal revenue.
Correct. But you also
So
have to
you
have the
can't-
expense.
Understood, but you can't roll forward federal revenue to use as match for federal revenue.
That's not federal, that's general fund, right?
Yeah, there's, at the end of 23, there was about $800,000 in cash that was rolling forward that had to be matched because we had all the revenue and all the expenses recorded. And so this 499 is what we decided not to put into other line items for 2024. So that 499 would cover any gaps for 2024, and then whatever we roll forward for 2025. So right now, we're not seeing gaps, but like I said, when all the dust settles, some of that 499 might be used and we might add to it.
So Sherry, just for clarification, you're not seeing that we need to adjust additional general fund at this point to be able to meet the projected expenditures that we're recommending
No.
here? I think that's,
No.
and rightfully so, I think that's what Lucia's trying to get to, is to make sure that the expenditures that we're indicating we'll make, that there is sufficient match available between FY '24 and FY '25 that's listed here. There will be, you're not seeing any concern that we'd have to come to contingency out of our regular
No,
general
if we
fund if
didn't-
this fell short.
No, if we didn't have that large cash balance in 23 and what I suspect will be in 24, I would be concerned, but I'm not right now.
Okay, I just want to make sure we have enough. Okay.
Commissioner Maloney, as we indicated at the retreat, we anticipate running out of undesignated sometime in the round of fiscal year '27. We're going to continue to draw that down, and we will be out of that available match around that timeframe.
If every expenditure holds.
We've
You
been
spend,
out
right.
matching our, for the last couple of years. We've been drawing that undesignated down, using that as match, yes. And we anticipate spending that out in a couple of years.
Thanks, and I appreciate the explanation, Sherry. So then we're saying that we acknowledge that the budget as presented doesn't balance, but it will be adjusted to balance with carry forward during the augmentation? Is that what we need for the motion then?
No,
It's
the
an
budget
automatic process.
balances.
Well,
Yeah,
It
the budget
automatically
balances.
does that. All of our accounts and the special revenues that she talked about in the beginning, it automatically happens as process, so we don't need it in our motion because it's already part of the financial processes that we do when we close out every fiscal year. She has to do this in every fund to determine what rolls forward.
I completely
Yeah.
understand,
Right.
but we just acknowledged that the back of the napkin calculation of just the 50% ones for match don't cover what's in this budget as presented.
So,
I
so
understand
what
you're
you're,
saying.
okay, so hold on. So revenues have to equal expenses in every budget.
Mhm.
What you're missing is that there's a cash piece on the balance sheet that is available as we roll forward year over year over year. So every budget in the city has to have a revenue that equals expenses, so it balances.
I understand. What
But
I'm
there's
saying is
excess
the mix isn't right. So that we're relying on too much federal money and not enough non-federal money. So it doesn't match. The revenue doesn't match the expenditures. And I see the cash. I do see the cash in the 2024 revised budget. But that line, if you move that into the revenue side, you're going to have to add to the expenses to get it to match, if you say, in the 2025 column. But I'm saying you can't add more expenses. We can't cover the expenses that are in there. So what needs to happen is if we aren't going to spend all of our federal grants because we don't have enough match, then we need to do something on the accounting side. And I am not an accountant, but there is not enough non-federal dollars to spend the federal dollars that are in this budget. The mix is off.
So part of the discussion, Sherry, and we could look at this in the future, you have the option of looking at your 2024 reestimate numbers or your revised budget where you have the 499 in 24. You could actually reduce that, push it into ending fund balance and bring it in as beginning fund balance in 2025 to show the match ratio. I mean, there's
I can do that.
yeah,
We
there's
just
lots
don't
of ways to
typically
do
do that,
that.
but
The
I can do
money's
that.
actually here. But I think what Lucia's trying to say is she'd like to see the split in the proper column. That's all. So recognizing a balance sheet transaction and a year-end transaction, you can, in this budgetary column, we would just reduce the 24,499, reduce it by the 125,000 that's needed for the match, your back of napkin, and you can push that into beginning fund balance and then put it into the line. So it gets us to the same place, but I don't,
Right.
again, it's fine.
We just need, if we're approving a
Right.
budget to cover the services we need to make sure that there's money there to cover the services that we say we're going to cover.
Yeah, it's there.
I appreciate that. And then I just had one more question, if you don't mind. On the line 86, Chris, the vehicle replacement program, I don't recall the last time that we bought a bus. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. It has been a while since we've purchased a bus. The last buses we received delivery were in the summer of 2022. We have not authorized the purchase of another bus since that time. We do have an open contract with Creative Bus that we could purchase them, and we've been working on coordinating with Fleet on potentially the purchase of new 2 paratransit buses. The VA hospital, as an example, recently purchased some ProMaster vans that our previous general manager really, really likes. And so Creative Bus, my understanding, provides that service, so that could be a good option for us. There are some challenges we've had with the more recent buses and want to make sure we're continuing to purchase the right ones going forward. That, accompanied with staff delays and the challenge of procurement for vehicles, has delayed the purchase. It's becoming very important that we need to purchase some buses. Appreciate the question.
I have purchased those buses and they're not easy to spec. So I appreciate that clarification. Would you, that 1.394 million, those are for, I don't know if this is the right word, so forgive me, maybe overdue buses?
Mhm.
Are there buses where we've been able to extend their life because of working through all these details of the spec and the procurement? Is all of that money still needed?
I think it depends on the size of the bus we plan on spending. We have been able to extend the life of a couple of buses, replacement transmission, replacement motors. Those have been implemented. We want to make sure those are expensive items. We want to use them, and they have extended the life. The other buses are slated to be replaced actually in fiscal year 24, and so they're reaching their useful life this year, some of our larger buses. Looking at what are the bus needs, it's part of the discussion at our zero emission transition plan. I've had some conversations with RTC Washoe as well as TTD on what do they like, what are their challenges, what are they using, what are they seeing, trying to get some peer input on different bus types. I would like to hold it there now until we know what we're going to buy, and then we can move it out when we've made those purchases, not adding to it this year, so there's no added budget in there because of that money is still there. We also are going to start developing a way to track that money a little bit more accurately by creating projects and tracking them in the munis using project numbers and tracking software so that we can account specifically for local match that's been budgeted and then not purchased that particular fiscal year so it doesn't get used in other ways. So we're working on starting that process and plan on discussing with our financial analyst at Public Works on how to create those and get that going in the near term.
Awesome, thank you. And then, sorry, one final question here. There have been a number of projects or a couple of projects that I recall, but we haven't gotten an update on it, like the solar bus stop updates and all of those. Is that in here somewhere as carry forward? Where are those projects?
Those projects, again, are other ones we want to carve out of this. My understanding is that match from the budget has been included in that undesignated bucket of money, if you will. There is no update on those projects. We haven't begun the solar lighting project. We have purchased and are working on some new signs, which is one of those items, and want to get that project moving in lieu or in combination with routes as well. And that's part of the coordinated human services plan that was discussed earlier.
I assume you're tracking those projects that we've approved that we haven't built.
We have those line items on our side. On our side, we have all those they're not budget items in here, but we have those tracked internally in our division.
So if we use that undesignated to cover the expenses in this budget, but this budget doesn't cover those projects, how do we reconcile that?
We would pull from the undesignated when those projects expenses hit.
Okay, but if we need them for match for office supplies, vehicle fuel, small furnishings, power, presumably we wouldn't have that money left for solar lighting and signs.
It's possible.
Okay,
Those were included in the calculation of when the money would run out in the presentation that was provided at the retreat. Those projects were included
They
as
were included.
expenditures.
okay, thank you. Sorry, I understand those were a lot of questions, but I appreciate your responses.
Yeah, no problem. So Sherry, just a general question. I'm assuming, and I thought I heard you say, but let's put it better on the record to make sure you didn't have any issue with moving the differential needed for the match out of the 499 on line 85, pushing it into ending fund balance, and then taking it into the 25 budget as beginning fund balance. Therefore, the match would show for the right fiscal years.
I can do that for fiscal year 25 and for the final budget.
Right, during final.
Yeah, no
Right.
problem.
Yeah, won't get it done during
Either way,
tentative, which
it's
is fine. She's pushing numbers everywhere. Okay. So again, I don't have any problem with that. It's always good to have it align. Okay, anybody have any others or any other changes or thoughts or something besides that we need? No? Okay, well then I think the motion is stated, but I think we should add as discussed on the record because we'd like to have those small changes made. So if somebody would like to make a motion, that would be wonderful. Is that supervisor? Sorry. Ms. Schutte. Wrong meeting, sorry.
I move to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the fiscal year 2025 budget and budgets and supplemental requests for the regional transportation, transit, CAMPO, and street maintenance funds as discussed on the record.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, let the record reflect the vote was 4 yeses, 1 no by Ms. Maloney. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 5B, which is discussion and possible action regarding the 5th Street Roundabout Improvement Project, including the evaluation of potential interim measures on this one. And Casey, you are up. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Casey Sylvester, City Transportation and Traffic Engineer. Give me a quick second to get my presentation up. Here we go. All right, so today we're going to talk about the exploration of our interim solutions for the East 5th Street Roundabout. So just a little bit of history here. So this roundabout on East 5th Street was constructed initially by NDOT in 1999. It's been in the same configuration since 2001, so that's been 23 years at this point. It was previously a four-way stop. Previous actions in March of 2022, the board selected alternative 1, which is shown on the right of the slide, for a proposed roundabout expansion. I'm going to refer to that as the full build-out later in my slides. On May 10th, RTC directed staff to pause design on the roundabout due to funding until we could identify how to fund the project and to evaluate temporary enhancements to the roundabout. In July, it was further discussed, and you guys discussed metering for the roundabout. And last month, RTC approved a request to pursue community project funding for fiscal year 2025 for the full build-out. Note that the full build-out would operate acceptably in 2050 based upon our normal design procedures to project out to a future year and evaluate operations up to that point. In existing operations, the AM is the controlling time period. The level of service is currently F, and the volume to capacity ratio is 1.336, which are well below our current thresholds or above, depending on how you're looking at it, I suppose. So our thresholds are a level of service of D, or a volume to capacity ratio of 0.85 for roundabouts. Volume to capacity ratio, generally how that one works is the closer you get to 1, the worse operations get. Then over 1 means that operations are failing. So we looked at different alternatives for what we might be able to do in the interim, and we looked at metering for the roundabouts. We looked at adding additional channelized turn lanes on the locations that don't already have them. We also looked at enhancements such as auxiliary storage lanes, like in advance of a channelized turn lane, having that storage lane for cars to queue up in, and acceleration lanes after the roundabouts to improve operations. So one of the main items to look at based upon previous direction was metering. So how metering works is one leg has a traffic signal upstream, and it can control how quickly vehicles can enter the roundabout from that leg. That allows other legs that previously were unable to gain access to the roundabout due to the high flows to be able to enter. One of the side effects of that is when a leg that was previously hindered is able to enter the roundabout, then it prohibits the other movements or the other approaches from being able to enter the roundabout, so you get increased delay in other places. But sometimes it can be used as a balance. So we analyzed metering on 3 different legs. We have 3 different alternatives. And what we determined is that it did not improve the level of service to better than F. And while we did have some improvement on the volume to capacity ratio with some of the alternatives, we never got below 1. And many of the other approaches performed worse. I mean, the other approaches performed worse than all the alternatives, but in some cases reducing to failing on some alternatives. So we also looked at some other enhancements. Like I mentioned a few slides ago, we have a channelized right turns, auxiliary lanes in advance, and departing lanes in combination of those with metering. We had a little bit better in results in this case, so we were able to get our level of service to be improved, D or better, for overall roundabout and for each approach, and we had our volume to capacity ratio get below 0.85 for one of our alternatives. It is important to note that this analysis was only for existing conditions, so this is what operations would be today if we had this out there, and so we decided to then look at what would happen. Well, how long would these operations work before we reached failing again? And based upon that one alternative, 5B, lasted all the way for a 15-year life to failure, which would bring us to almost 2040. And just to compare with our ultimate build out, that gets us to 2050 without doing any sort of changes. And I would also like to point out that all of the alternatives that we evaluated introduce throwaway. So what throwaway is that when you construct something and you need to do further enhancements later, they're not going to reduce the cost of later construction. It's simply going to be more things that have to be removed in the removal portion of construction, and then the new roundabout will be put in with no benefits from the enhancements. So just to summarize, the meters did change the operations, but they were not an improvement. We can achieve improved operations to some degree, but we introduced throwaway. At this point, staff recommendation is to pursue the full build out through the community project funding. I would also like to note that there is a chance that we will not get that community project funding, and if that's the case, maybe we should reevaluate with pursuing 5B, but at this point, I would say that it seems that that would be our best option to pursue the full build out.
So just in general, a question, what money do we have currently allocated to this project? I know we moved some over to a different, what's left right now in this project budget?
That is a good question. Chris, are you able to jump in on that?
Yeah, these were tasks that began as part of the roundabout evaluation, the larger Fifth Street project. We left a little bit of budget. Once we split the projects in half, we left a little bit to complete these miscellaneous elements, such as the metering. But there really is, after this effort, there's very little, if any, dollars left in the roundabout portion of the work until we obligate additional funding through, the community development, the community block, the congressional funding,
spending.
the direct spend, the earmark money, and other sources. So we're not pursuing design. We're at 60%. We've paused that, and we're closing out the last items that we committed to coming back and
I
describing.
guess what I want to get to is a little bit different. So this is in Transportation District 3. And when we had dollars, we had them attached to Transportation District 3. And where we moved money, did that stay in Transportation District 3 or did we move to Transportation District 4?
So Fifth Street was funded with Surface Transportation Block Grant funds, federal funds. That fund was de-obligated and is waiting to be re-obligated to another project. There's around $200,000 of that original de-obligation amount that needs to be reassigned. The majority of that de-obligation got moved to Colorado, which allowed us to move local funds off of Colorado, which have gone to Winnie Lane. So it's sort of a little bit of a moving of funds. So we had extra funds on Fifth Street, moved them to Colorado. That freed up local funds, which we moved to Winnie Lane, which is now been awarded for construction and will start here soon. So there's a couple of $100,000 left that we will assign to a project at some point. We don't have that identified quite yet
Yeah.
It's not a lot of money for the federal
All
side.
I'm really trying to get to is I don't want Transportation District 3 to actually have been shorted on a project. That's what I'm getting to. We've worked really hard as RTC to fairly distribute each year's tax dollars to make sure that we rotate from each of the transportation districts. And I just want to make sure that we're as closely as we can, nothing's an exact science, but that we don't short Transportation District 3
I do not
because
believe.
the project didn't turn out as successfully, like you said, when
Sure.
we got in and said, ooh, this is gonna cost a lot more money.
No, we did not shortchange District 3. We completed a number of others. We completed a slurry of Deer Run Road. We did a reconstruction of Center Drive at the south end of town. I think we did the slurry of Clear Creek at the same time, Clear Creek by Costco. Those are all in District 3 as well.
Okay.
And were completed on schedule, with our other funds, local funds.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure it's important to me that each of the transportation districts, I had a comment from someone that thought maybe different areas of the community don't get their fair share of road repair work. And I assured them that that simply is not true. We utilize a methodology and we rotate. You might have to wait 5 years before it gets back to your district, but that we do fairly distribute and that every June, this committee right here works extremely hard to equitably distribute dollars. And so the next one coming up is 2, right, is Transportation District 2. But I just wanted those that are in Transportation District 3 to understand they didn't lose their share of money for repairs in their area because this project wasn't successful. So that's what I was looking for. So thank you. Anybody else? Greg?
Yeah, got a question on this one since, it is a problem that's not going away. You've paused the design. Have we made any progress? In the past, we've discussed state lands and realigning this location of the roundabout. Is that still a possibility? Since we're still looking for a lot of money, and from what I remember, that could be cheaper if that land swap could be worked out.
Thank you, Commissioner Novak. We are currently at a 60% design, assuming that we don't get those state lands, but I believe we have inquired with the state about that property, and there's potential that it could happen. Well, I don't know if potential is the right word. It's feasible to happen. And so if that's able to happen, that does save us a little bit on budget, being able to shift over like that. And so we're still open to the possibility at this point.
We let her get out of the room earlier. We should have put her on the record. Darn it.
State lands is not NDOT.
Well, no, but there's a piece.
They all work for a guy on Mountain Street.
They
Yes.
all do. Mhm.
Okay.
Mr. Dodson?
Just wondering, did you do any rough cost estimates of the interim measures?
Thank you, Commissioner Dodson. We have not done any cost estimates on the alternatives. Chris and I had a conversation about it. We estimate that alternative 5B would cost between $1 million and $1.5 million. But we have not done a formal investigation of that as of yet.
Yeah, a couple comments about that I would question whether or not it'd be eligible for any federal funding, with the interim improvement. But there is a, significant difference between the cost of the ultimate build out and what this interim would provide. I think I've seen an estimate that's 6 million, maybe less, maybe more like 5 for the ultimate that we're considering. But I guess you made the point earlier that if we didn't get these congressionally
Designated spending.
funding, might want to come back and take another harder look at this.
I agree. I don't know if there's a question in there I can respond to, but I agree with your comments. Oh, the cost of the full build out.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm good. I just.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, the interim cost is what I was after. Thank you.
Do you have a question? Shooty.
Not a question so much, but more of a comment. I appreciate you getting back to me with my questions. Until we know whether we have the opportunity for the community project funding, a little bit what Mr. Dotson said, that I wouldn't want to invest in that, and then that could undermine the opportunity for that funding. I think it's more appropriate to wait, and especially in light of the fact that if we were to proceed with 5B, which is, in my opinion, the best option for mitigation, but we can do that at a later point once we know if the money doesn't come in, and if it does, then that's, we don't have to worry about it. So thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Ms. Maloney?
Thank you. And I can imagine how from your seat, we're looking at all these alternatives and you're like, this is what staff recommended at the beginning was this full project. I don't think it's a waste of time. Not that you said that, but I think it's so important that we're looking at alternatives and trying to find innovative solutions. So I really appreciate the effort here. So echoing some of those comments. I'm also curious, Casey, since you're sort of fresh eyes on all of our systems and traffic engineering stuff, and from what you've seen, if we were to go after a grant, is this project citywide still one of the highest priorities? I know it's a priority for sure, no question. Are there other higher priorities that you're seeing that are coming up that maybe we haven't discussed that would compete for this community grant or other funding?
That is a really good question. And there are so many things to take into account, evaluating safety throughout
Sure.
the city and congestion. I would say that short of the Spooner Junction on the south end of town, I can't think of a place that has more congestion than that roundabout does at this time. And so based solely on that criteria, I would say yes, it's a higher priority citywide.
Fantastic. It's great to get that on the record so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Okay, somebody else have any other? Okay, I don't see any other questions from up here. Is there any public comment on item 5B? See none, I'll bring it back up here then for a motion. I think Greg looks like he's ready. Does he look like he doesn't look like he's ready? Oh, I thought he had his paper all aligned and ready to go. Mr. Dotson's ready. Go ahead.
I move to direct staff to decline to pursue interim measures to enhance traffic flow at the Fifth Street roundabout and to continue pursuing opportunities for a full build-out of the Fifth Street roundabout improvement project.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 5C, which is discussion and possible action regarding Amendment 1 to Contract 243-00078 for JUB Engineers to complete additional civil engineering design for the roadway projects in Performance Districts 2, 3, and 4, and to increase the contract by $68,050 for a new total not to exceed $247,150. For the record, please note, you have late material on this item. The corrections are on the date on Exhibit A to 9/13/2023, and the other corrections changed it to time and materials on the last page 4 of Exhibit 1, just for the record, so everyone's on the same document here. And are you ready? Okay, take us through this. Thank you.
Guillermo Munoz, Assistant Project Manager. Contract 243-0078 was initially approved in September of 2023 to allow for design services for JUB engineers to complete roadway projects in districts 2, 3, and 4. Staff was asked to expand the scope of the project should any additional ARPA funds be available. We've expanded the scope of the maintenance projects we plan on performing, and we have expanded rehabilitation of Ponderosa. We have also included water main replacement in Ponderosa. The water line replacement work is coming out of local funds from the Water Infrastructure Capital Account.
Okay, does any member have a question? It's a good thing we got some ARPA money, huh? How about we just say that to help us with our road work? Okay, no members have a question. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back up here then for a motion. And please, again, Ms. Maloney, don't forget to say late material. Thanks.
I move to approve the amendment as presented and included in the late material.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 5D, discussion and possible action regarding Amendment 3 to Contract 213-00242 for Hansford Economic Consulting LLC to expand the scope of services for Carson City's roads funding project and a $18,645 increase in the contract compensation for a new total not to exceed $114,920 for the contract. Ms. Schutte, may I have your disclosure, please?
Yes. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Okay, thank you so much. Chris, are you going to take us through this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is to amend Hansford Economics Consulting's contract as listed in the staff report. Catherine's been helping us through the local road funding project for a number of years now. And as we near the end of that project, there's a few last-minute tasks that we want to complete, most notably developing and, I should say, finalizing this summary of all the funding mechanisms that we've been analyzing and as well as the, I want to say project delivery, but scenario planning is the term I'm looking for. Scenario planning on the different funding strategies and how those could be combined or stacked or independently and what that means in terms of roads. So she'll be finishing up that report and she'll be supporting presentations to this board, the RTC, as well as the Board of Supervisors coming up later this summer. We anticipate completing the project and not needing, to extend this contract any further, but want to make sure we have her to complete the work. So that is it. Thank you.
Does any member have a question?
Yeah, I guess just a general one. Lots of, things haven't been decided yet, and I know she's been doing a good job here, but will there be any implementation needed potentially next year, depending on how things go, or think we can handle that internally?
I don't know that answer because I don't know what's going to be brought forward or recommended or approved. So on an implementation side, we're not planning to do any implementation right now using Catherine or Hansford Economic.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any problem with what the scope is for now.
Anybody else? I don't see any other questions. Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I don't see any, so we'll bring it back up here. I think I'm just going to make a general comment just because this contract has been through so many amendments. And so overall, I'm not thrilled that we keep coming back and having to do another amendment for time and materials. And I don't know if this just became so complex and that it was of such interest to the public with hearings and things like that, that things took longer than originally anticipated. And I certainly think public comment and outreach is the right thing to do, but just in general, I was a little bit disappointed that I had to amend the contract again to give more dollars to complete a task that was already listed in a contract. So I'm gonna guess the real issue is it took longer than anticipated for the work, and that's why we're here today. Is 'cause
Well,
it just-
I think there's a number of issues. One is that. A second one is there was extra work than we didn't anticipate. So she did some support that she wasn't originally scoped to do, which I definitely appreciate that support. And then, lastly, we sort of kept it open-ended intentionally when it was started to allow for flexibility of the funding mechanisms. Where does the direction of this board, the Board of Supervisors, want us to go? And we could tailor each contract or each amendment specific to focus on those elements rather than a larger sort of blanket open-ended contract. So that was a strategy we took. Maybe we could have done something differently, in hindsight, but that was the strategy we took, and that's why we're doing this tonight.
And I do want the final results. I mean, I toyed honestly with maybe this board, and the Board of Supervisors has already made the first decision, which is potentially for ballot measures. And so is this even a worthy expenditure? But I think that the long-term benefit is to have final answers for reports and work that you do. And I think in fairness to all the public that has been concerned about the GID, we heard even comments earlier today. They really want to know and understand what the options and potentials are. And I think this report at least provides that. I don't know if the final answer, in all honesty, helps us or hurts us. I don't know. But I think that information is always of value. And so for that reason, I'm going to support this so that we get a final report, if nothing else, for the public.
Yeah, I think, we're doing this for Carson City, but it could come in handy at the state level if there's additional discussion next legislative session about all these revenue packages. So I think we might get a return on our investment out of that as well. So I'm definitely in
I think
favor.
you might even be right that I don't think Carson City is the only governmental entity struggling with road funding, right? And I think everyone is facing that, where the inflation of the material has outpaced I don't want to say archaic for gas tax, but we already all know that's relatively flat, so, but we don't have that in the cost of materials. And therefore, we're not even able to accomplish what we used to do. So at some point, it may not be a GID. The legislature may come up with a different thing, but certainly the work that we show can maybe help inform decisions. So good point. Lucia?
I had similar knee-jerk as you, Mayor, about additional funding. I thought that the summary of the additional work on packet page 156 and 157 was really helpful, and that's what swayed me. In particular, I wanted to highlight the Spanish translations. I think overall, we as a city, we can do better with inclusions and bringing people that don't speak English into decisions. And so I was thrilled to see at the workshop that I attended that they were in Spanish, and applaud staff for making that call. And I'm happy to pay for that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Anybody else? All righty. I already asked for any public comment and didn't have any, so I'll take a motion. Greg, you're ready on this one.
Yeah, it's a short one.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
I move to approve Amendment 3 as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 5E, discussion and possible action on an amendment between Carson City Regional Transportation Commission and the Nevada Department of Transportation for the West Carson Vulnerable User Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. Let's get that one out, huh? Which will add $500,000 in federally, congressionally designated spending for a new total of $1.5 million. Make a corresponding $26,316 increase in the 5% local match for a new total local match of $78,948. Extend the agreement's termination date to June 30th, 2028, and revise the parties' contact information. And additionally, authorization for the transportation manager to sign the amendment, as well as any future amendments to the agreement regarding extensions of time or changes in the funding amount not exceeding 10%. And Ms. Schutte, may I have that disclosure again?
One more. This one's the shortest. My nephew, Chris Martinovich, is the city staff presenter on this item. My disclosure and analysis from item 5D applies here as well. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his city service, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other Carson City resident. Therefore, I have no disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting.
Thank you so much. Mr. Martinovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I alluded to this last month where we done some additional research to see if there was additional congressionally designated spending available for this project. Originally, we thought we were awarded $1 million through some research on staff side as well as coordination with NDOT and their financial services division. Turned out the full amount was apportioned under a separate line item. So we were able to find that, and we are now amending the LPA agreement to include that funding and associated local match into the agreement for this project as originally requested as part of the congressionally designated spending. That's what I have. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? It's always great. Can't really turn down more money, huh? Yeah, instead of the opposite direction. It's like we boo-booed the wrong way. Okay, no members have any questions? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion. Who wants to do this one? Ms. Schutte.
I move to approve the amendment as presented and to authorize the transportation manager to sign the amendment and future amendments regarding extension of time and changes in funding not exceeding 10% of the present amount.
A second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you so much. We're now on to agenda item 6A, our transportation manager's report. Mr. Martinovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to address one comment received earlier tonight related to the micropaver asset management software. I'm happy to entertain other discussion as well. I did ask our paver expert, who's an expert in paver set analysis, to prepare a short memo for us, for you all, the board, for the public to, I'll say, pull the curtain back a little bit on the software. It is a microsimulation software, so there are computer analytics and things that occur in the background. So I don't exactly know all the details of how the programming works, but we can definitely provide background on the cost assumptions, how it's doing its analysis, what its results are, and then a little bit of staff's interpretation of how we use those results to create projects and make recommendations. So they are working on that, and we can provide that and share that at future meetings. So just wanted to note that.
Chris, it's not a Carson City specific program. It's widely used software package, right?
Yeah, it's a very common tool used exactly for the purpose that we're using it for. It's very common in the industry, and we're continuing to use it. Yep. Second thing is, I wanted to give an update on local road funding project briefly. A number of project website updates have occurred. We've given some presentations at our the March public meeting, as well as last night at the Sierra forums. Those materials, most of them have been uploaded, and updates to the website pages have been made. So look for those, and if they're not done yet, they will be in the coming few days. A lot of material, a lot of updates, so a lot of new information is up there for those who are interested in learning more and finding out the latest and greatest info there. So look for that. Next month, we have our District 2 prioritization, so staff is really working to pull that information together, pulling asset database out of our not only paver, but the GIS database in terms of traffic volumes and ADA needs and all those needs that go into safety needs. They all go into that project prioritization process. We do plan to have a step-by-step process of where we started, the steps that are applied, and then the outcomes, not only for our typical, but also the theoretical, if we had additional funding for some local roads, what that would look like as well. And they'll be generally identical with some slight variations. So look for that in June. Staff is also working on an update to the ADA transition plan, Carson City's ADA transition plan. And I think this will be in line with previous requests we've received from you, Madam Chair, about talking about a little bit more about ADA compliance, when it's needed, what it is. I know one of the members of the public is very interested in those criteria. So an update to the ADA transition plan along with some ADA background, I think we're working on, and we'll bring that up maybe June, but that's our tentative schedule. So know that that's going on in the background as well. The work on the DMV path, the saga continues with that. State lands, I'm going to say, I wish were more friendly, but we're going to try to work through that. If worse comes to worse, we can potentially split the project or figure out a path forward. We're probably looking at either a splitting of the project or a delay to the project by a year while we figure what's going on with state lands. And then we're trying to make a decision, but it's not an easy, we're not fully in control of making those decisions. So we're doing what we can to work with folks at state lands and above state lands to get some progress made on this, essentially a permission to build the path there. So that's where we are on that. Hopefully more to know. We'll have more at our next meeting in June.
Chris, can you tell us, so were they not a part of the original planning for that path?
They were. We received a letter from them saying that they were willing to allow us to have the path there, and that was part of what we submitted to NDOT. And when we got the funding, we have a different administration, we have different folks at state lands, so I think some of those commitments may not be the same. I'm not sure, but originally we were very optimistic.
Chris,
That wasn't good.
I've watched the NDOT board meetings every month, and there's been a lot of public input on specific projects, specifically from the lake more than anything. And it's more like you go there and complain, and sometimes they listen. And I'm thinking some of these issues, maybe we have to elevate to the NDOT board. Our congressman was there this week, Mr. Amity, and he was more concerned about Union Pacific Railroad, and some other issues statewide, but it looks like we have another way to, make our voices known. Well, and some of it just sounds like straightforward, that how could anybody argue against it? But
Well,
Concern is?
I do, and if the district attorney wants to add in, he can. I just want to correct Commissioner Novak that this is the Division of Conservation and Natural Resources is over state lands, not the Nevada Department of Transportation. So there's nothing NDOT can do about this directly. I mean, they would probably be in the same boat that we would and just say, hey, can we get this easement through? I'm not sure. It could be worth an avenue, but I had a meeting yesterday with the director of NDOT, and this topic came up. I said, how's your relationship with state lands? Is there anything you can do for us? What's the status? And they're like, well, we're kind of just two agencies that work together when needed, and we can coordinate when we have to. So it was sort of they weren't like, oh yeah, we're going to go to bat for you, nor were they, oh, we're not working with them at all. So it could be another avenue, but I think we were trying some things here at Public Works with our real property side, the district attorney's office, and we're trying to get things moving as well to get this project going.
And I don't know if state lands is still involved, but Department of Public Safety still wants a new building on South Carson Street, right?
I don't know that answer.
It's in their budget, right? So, yeah, we know where they live. Okay.
Do you have something to enlighten us with, Mr. Tully?
Yeah, I'll just say so Adam Tully, Deputy District Attorney, my understanding of state land's position is that the DMV multi-use path falls within the bounds of the Capitol Complex Master Plan that was approved by the legislature at its last session. And that's, for reasons that aren't totally clear, that's now a problem.
Because the path was not in the master plan?
I'm not sure, it's not clear to me
What
why
issue?
that's a new problem, but that's my understanding of what's been relayed.
Well, sugar. We do the right thing and go get a letter first. That,
We got a letter.
yeah, we thought we had our ducks in a row, but oh well.
Moving on.
Yeah, we did have our ducks. All right, okay.
Moving on to another item, yesterday, or was it yesterday or Monday? The Federal Lands Access Program grant call for projects was released. So staff are evaluating options for the FLAP. It's built Sierra Vista Lane, Kings Canyon. They're doing, I think, a 2 to 4 year call for projects. I haven't dug into the NOFO. My understanding is around $12 to $14 million per year available for all of Nevada. Federal Lands has been really actively trying to do better at long-range planning. And so Federal Lands, in coordination with all, a variety of state agencies, including CAMPO, Carson City, and RTC, as well as the Parks and Recreation Open Space Department, there's a new document that's being finalized for Federal Lands access planning. And we've been coordinating with them off and on, mostly through email, and projects that we've recommended and thought were eligible and good candidates are showing up in this plan. So it's super promising that, thoughts that, long-range plans that we have had in our TIP and in our project master, our regional transportation plan being recommended, and those plans are being incorporated, sort of that comprehensive planning side of things. So promising that, we're probably going to apply for something, looking at what the right things are and matching and who's going to lead and all of that's, just getting started, but look for that as a possible grant going forward.
And Chris, you kind of touched on it, but Carson City could deliver the project. It's not.
Well, I'd hope so.
That's an
because
option, but
I
I think the
don't know.
point is.
I don't know if it is.
See if you can get it done
Fingers
somehow.
crossed.
Yeah.
Okay. Last thing I wanted to talk about quickly here is electric vehicle use. It's come up a lot lately about how many electric vehicles there are or there aren't in Carson City. Coordinated with the DMV a little bit, and as of February 24, there are approximately 74,000 active vehicle registrations in Carson City. 367 vehicles are registered as electric only. 4,800 are hybrids or flex fuel. 4,600 are diesel, and 55,000 vehicles are gasoline only powered. So by far, the majority of the fleet remains to be gasoline, but I just thought that would be interesting for the commission to know the number of registered vehicles by fuel type. There's a variety of other categories, compressed natural gas, hydrogen, things like that, but those are pretty small numbers in the big picture.
That's great information.
Thank you, Chris. And so just to clarify, the 367 EV onlys are likely not the cause of our decrease in gas
They're
revenue,
probably
as stated
not the
earlier.
cause. That's what I have for the transportation manager's report.
Meeting dates, do you want to go over the next?
Meeting dates,
RTC?
yes. So there'll be no RTC meeting in May. We're not planning on holding one. So the next scheduled RTC meeting is June 12th, I believe is the date, the second Wednesday of the month, as usual.
Verify that. Okay, then we're on to agenda item 6B, our street operations report, please.
Yes, street operations report. I didn't get a chance, spring break and vacations and things, I didn't get a chance to discuss in detail with Greg King, our street supervisor. I did want to note one thing that I did coordinate with, and that's the sidewalk flat work there, kind of in the middle of the page under the concrete repair maintenance. So this is just a variety of work that's happened across the city. We did have a little period of good weather there. In early February, we were able to get out and do some of that work, so they were able to accomplish that. It's good wintertime work, so long as we keep the concrete from freezing. But they were able to accomplish a lot of that. Also did a lot of weed abatement in preparation for the springtime growth, and I saw them out today doing continual, weed abatement and mitigation. So those are the two I highlighted for my talking points. I'm happy to follow up with anything if anyone has any questions on any other specific items.
No, I just think it's a great report because oftentimes individuals have a tough time of understanding what street operations is. So I think that this report really drives home the non-direct potential asphalt, because I hear a lot of times put every dollar into the asphalt, but these are other things you have to do that help protect the asphalt, but the community in it, in all, right? You can't have trees in your traffic line or in your sight line. Somebody has to go out and trim them to make sure. So I think it's a wonderful report that shows all of the work, the great work that our street operations team does. So please again, thank them for their hard work. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 6C. Do you have any other?
6C, this has a new item I'd like to highlight. We plan to make this a monthly item from now on. I'll go over this real quick. So we're calling this our Transportation and Streets Revenue Account Summary. Happy for input or feedback on the name. What we're essentially saying is the first box there is the number of gasoline gallons sold in Carson City by month. And so you can see there in fiscal 21, 22, 23 by month. And then this is the latest and greatest available data we have is through December of 2023. So you can see the monthly averages. That's millions of gallons. Right below that is the revenue that we received for those sale of those gallons. And so the 9 cent there, the RTC 9 cent revenue is broken out, as well as the 6.35 cents that goes to street operations. And so those are broken out, and they're broken out in the information we receive from the Department of Motor Vehicles on these line items. Below that is our diesel gallons sold. So we had gasoline at the top, this below is diesel gallons, again by month, by fiscal year. And then the revenue is the last line of that with the dollar amounts, the 482, 517, 661, and $239,000 to date in diesel revenue. The last box on this first page is the sales tax that goes to street operations, the 0.25% sales tax. These are dollar amounts by month, so there's no gallons with sales tax. So these are dollar amounts by month, and you can see the month-to-month difference and year-to-year variance for those individual months over time. On the next page is, first table there is developer contributions. So we're tracking our pro rata shares for particular projects or other developer contributions that we get through a variety of conditions of approval through the Planning Commission. The first few there were received for the Appian intersection, and the following ones were received for various developments in those individual performance districts, with the last one being a check received for the pro rata share on the Ormsby Boulevard connector over in West Carson. The way we're going to use this particular table is if we receive a new pro rata share, we'll add it on here. Once it gets assigned to a project, we'll list, like we've done with Appian, that it's been assigned to a project, and then we're going to move it off this list because it's going to move to our project status report, which also tracks the revenue and the count summaries for that. That way, this table doesn't get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger forever. So once we know we've assigned them to a project, as listed here as P75102 Appian, then we're going to delete them from this. You'll see that it got assigned. We'll delete them from this table, and they should show up in the project status report every other month, as we've always done. So that's the way we're going to use this at this point.
Chris, I have just a general thought.
Yeah.
Because we'll lose the ability to see the total developer contributions. So when you're going to move, for instance, Appian off, can you just have a line that says prior developer contributions? And so you have a cumulative total for the projects that have been assigned. Because I think what would be important, right? I don't want to lose the data that once it moves, because I think in general, the public is always on it. Get more from the developers, or that they don't even understand we have developer contributions that we do through planning. So if there's a way that you can just keep that one cumulative number at
We
the
can.
top of
Yes.
it or bottom of it.
We
that
track
would
that
be-
internally,
Yeah.
yes.
So that would be wonderful on this.
You'll see a big $475,000 increase next month
There you go.
to this list. So
Oh,
there
perfect.
we go. The next table is the electric vehicle charging revenue. So as this board may or may not know, the Board of Supervisors approved the charging of a fee at electric vehicle charging stations that Carson City owns and operates. There's one at 3rd Street parking lot, one at the community center here. To date, we've received that much revenue in January and February. I did get the March numbers for one of the two charging stations. It was $20, $22. So that'll show up next month, but I thought I would report that information for background. And then lastly is our capital sanitation street repairs. This is that line item in the budget. You can see the past, it matches the budget, but I wanted to provide an update as to what we get, periodically. It's not a monthly deposit, is my understanding. I'm not actually sure how it comes in, but wanted to report that so that it's tracked for all of you to see that particular line of that particular fund. So these are the ones we included at this time, and we're going to keep this updated monthly as indicated. So,
I think it's a great addition to, again, just show the public the numbers. Anybody else? Anything? Nothing? Okay, anybody else have anything they want to share or report? Or Greg?
We kind of touched on it earlier, but Carson City Planning has the master plan update going on right now, and there's public meetings this week. In fact, one's going on right now. And after hearing, well, one of my previous comments was, what about the state, right? What are they doing? And we say, well, it's not under our control. And I'm going, we got to figure out some way to work closer with the state. Or if there is a capital grounds master plan, we need to know about it. And especially on the transportation side, it's going to trigger some projects or not. So we do need to have those discussions going on. Nobody's trying to take somebody else's program over, but we need to have a little give and take, because that's what the whole transportation planning process is about, right? What's your future land use and how are things going? So I'm going to encourage everybody to give input to that Envision Carson City Master Plan update. And it does find its way in our regional transportation plan and the travel demand model. So it's important stuff that's going on.
Well, I think it permeates everything the city does, right? The Parks Department, it just permeates everything. So it really is an important document and something to participate in if you have ideas. Be great. Anybody else? Ms. Schutte?
Just a kudos last night, Sierra Nevada Forums and Darren Schultz and Chris Martinovich and Greg Novak. It was just such an incredible presentation, and I was sitting next to Dr. Lyons, and she said, wow, this is like one of the best I've ever seen. So well done and really informative and really interesting. So thanks for the time and effort that you all put into it.
Yeah, they did a great job. Okay, anybody else? That's it? Okay, we're going to move on then to agenda item 7, which is final public comment. Oh, boy, you guys. Oops. There's a cord there. If no one objects, we are adjourned. Thank you all for a great meeting and good work. Good work, good work.